Steven, and I'm Jake.
Last time I checked.
Steven, how are you doing, man?
Super, super. We heating up here down south, but we're dodging most of the bad heat and getting a lot of good dog work in and enjoying the change of the seasons. I'm not one of those people that usually complains about if it's too hot or if it's too cold. I'm just glad when it's supposed to be hot and it's hot, and when it's supposed to be cold, it's cold. I'm usually pretty good with it.
You know it's coming, so you can deal
Absolutely.
with it.
And we had such a good spring this year. I mean, it's probably been the best spring since I've been paying attention. As far as a lot of times we have a tendency to go straight from winter to summer here, and it's been cool and nice. And I mean, it's the 10th of June. It ought to be getting warm here. So it's been great.
Well, I'm straight across the state from you, ironically enough. How far am I from you? I'm at Lake Eufaula in
I mean, you're
Alabama.
literally on the western edge. So I mean, you follow as the borderline between Georgia and Alabama, and I am. If I do right, I can get to the South Carolina border in 20 minutes. So you're every bit of 4, maybe 4.5 hours away.
I got you. Well, I can tell you right now that it's hot. I agree with you, and I wasn't used to it because when I left my house yesterday morning in Fort Collins, it was 45 degrees and actually mixed. We had mixed snow and rain on my windshield when I was driving to the airport, and then I show up in Atlanta and it's freaking. I don't know how hot it was, but I know the humidity was very high. Butch Herb, good video and audio. We just
Super.
figured that out. This is really good. We have a really good connection. Maybe this will be the best show yet.
Hope
So,
so. Hope so.
so we got a couple things we're going to talk about before we get started in our lesson tonight. Stephen and Kendra just got back with some of their uh, what do you call them? Athletes. They're
Athletes, children, whatever you want to call them. We had a little bit of everything.
from the Super Retriever Series U, which is a college event, which was held at Peppers Pond in Mayflower, Arkansas this past weekend. And as I recall, Stephen and his team took first, second, and fifth place at the event. And I did talk to Shannon Nardi, the director and the owner and the organizer and everything else of the SRS and all of its affiliated events. And she was very pleased with how everything went. And she continued to tell me how inspiring it was that all the young people that were there were as excited as they were and and the level of participation was very high. So, A, congratulations to you and your team, and B, congratulations to the SRSU and the event that was held.
It's a super exciting thing. One to see young people that excited about getting out in the game. That's something that has always been very obvious to me is how important it is to try to bring new life, new blood into this sport because it doesn't take very long going to very many competitions. You realize there's not a lot of people that are in the younger demographic. So new ways to get them involved, new ways to get them excited is always a great thing. What's really cool, I was talking to Brian and Garris's father yesterday about it. I called him to say thank you for letting me be a part of it, for footing the bill for all that fun and games that we were having, and just how fun it was to be together as a big extended family. And I said, this is an incredibly personal thing for me, and you could even call it borderline selfish because it's I do it for the owners, I do it for the clients, but really at the end of the day, I do it for the dogs, I do it for our journey, and it's not for who else is watching. It's for our journey together and maximizing our time together, me and the dog. And it's even more special when you involve the children. And I'm just taking a step back and letting them take the front seat, and they get to steer the dogs, and they get to enjoy the highs and the lows and the roller coaster of emotions. And what's so neat to me, and I'll stand by it, is that it's not that we have the best dogs, it's that we as a team have the best communication. Me with the kids with the dogs, you know, like Garris said, Garris or Brian won. Garris, Brian, and Hunter have all been raked across the coals by me so many times it's not even funny. But you know, when I start to tell them something, they can complete my sentence. They know what's coming. They understand the dynamic of what we're doing. So when I'm coaching them at the line, it's not it's not that I'm saying something and they don't understand what I'm getting onto them for, or what I'm saying I want. When I tell them I want to get the right cast right here, they know what that cast is. And it's really fun to coach kids that have put in their time and earned what they got.
I'm a big believer that it goes both ways. You know, a coach is only as good as the students are willing to listen, and the students are only as good as the coach is willing to communicate. And so if you know, obviously you guys accomplish both things, and that's one of the things that I've learned in our session, Stephen, and what we're doing here on the Retriever Connection is you know, the best way for me to learn is to shut up and listen. And I mean, there's no you know, otherwise I'm distracting myself, and I'm stepping on my own toes by either, you know, just being distracting to you and me. So, you know, again, congratulations at the SRSU, and obviously to those students and the dogs. Y'all did a really good job, and I'm excited about that too, because at the end of the day, that's a recruiting platform to get more and people involved, is particularly young people, and to see people like that excited over that event, and hopefully that it grows, is inspiring to all of us. So good job, congratulations.
Absolutely.
One other thing I wanted to cover too, while we're still talking about dogs, I know Carol Cassidy is on here watching, and I know you probably don't want me to do this, Carol, because of your modesty. Um, and I'm not doing this just to sell your books. I'm doing this out of organic authenticity, because I want everyone to know that Carol, she's been watching our show, and all the lessons that I've been learning from Steven and my dog, and she was kind enough to send me one of her books. And so yesterday on my plane, I had a 3-hour flight from Denver to Atlanta, and I read most of this book. And one of the things that I found myself thinking as I was reading through it was, a, how great this book is, because it's on a teacher's level, teacher to student level. It's very easy to read and very fundamentally um, easy to understand. But one of the things that I found myself thinking was, and this may sound crazy, was, man, I learned so much from this book, and I'm going to read it again because I don't retain everything that I read, but I learned so much from this book that I found myself almost thinking, you know, the funnest part is learning. I'm not looking forward to being good at this. I'm looking forward to the next lesson, and looking forward to the next mistake, so that I can learn something new. And I found myself thinking, man, it's almost sad that I'm learning that I'm learning this, because I enjoy not knowing what I'm talking about, and I enjoy learning from Stephen. I enjoy reading your book, Carol. So again, thank you so much. If you guys have never seen this book or read it, most of you probably have, because you're here and you're into dogs, and it's very fundamental. If you haven't, get the book. It's really, really good.
What you accidentally documented there as well is what you just said, that the process of learning, the excitement of experiencing the dogs. That's why people end up with big shiny boxes and taking up the entire bed of their truck, or buying trailers, or getting chassis mounts. It's because you fall in love with the process. It's not just a dog, it's it's dogs, you know. And you know, for it might not be a popular thing to say, but I'll tell my clients in a skinny minute, I do not love your dog. And what I mean by that is that we haven't had enough time together. You know, the dogs that I develop an affinity for are the ones that we have been in the trenches together multiple times. You know, Aristotle said that you can't have a friend unless you've spent a lot of time and experience with that person. And I think it's the same way with a dog. You know, my job is not to love every dog that comes in my kennel. My dog is to teach that dog the principles of retriever training and give it the greatest opportunity to be a great retriever. And if we have enough time together and we experience life on the road, life at the line, the ups and downs together, we develop a much deeper bond. But it's not, you know, my job is not to walk through and to give every dog a pat on the head and tell them how much I love them. That's the owner's job. My job is to make them a functioning citizen.
No, I understand that, and you know, and to elaborate on what you're saying, it took me a while. I mean, I loved. I say I loved. I liked Tanner the moment that I saw him. I could just tell by his energy that this was going to be good. But it took me a while, particularly when we got home, because you know half the job is working with him, and the other half is getting him to adjust to our family, picking up his dog poop because we live in a semi-public area, and there's a lot more work to it than just going out and throwing bumpers. So, but I have come to particularly through all these sessions that we're doing, and this whole retriever connection thing, I have become to love my dog a lot, and I see now how I was just telling my friend TJ Mount the other day, I'm like, okay, so when he gets to be about 4 or 5, then I'm gonna have to get a puppy, and then when Tanner's 8 or 9 and the puppy's 4 or 5, then I have to get another puppy. Then all of a sudden you got a big silver box on the back of your truck.
That's exactly right. That's
So
exactly right.
So, okay, so tonight, what our goal is, hopefully, I'd like to move on. We both would like to move on after this, but hopefully we can wrap up the down the shore blind session, the concept, and we do have 3 videos. Assuming, probably not assuming that everyone has, but hopefully a lot of people that are watching have seen the 3 videos that I posted on Instagram and Facebook. And, we're going to talk about it. Stephen and I have not talked about either of these or any of these runs. We talked the other day that we weren't going to communicate about it because we want all the information to come out as original and authentic as possible. So, whatever he says to me tonight is the first I will have ever heard of anything he has to say, and I'm looking forward to learning. And hopefully, we've made some improvements. I think we've made some great strides, but there's still lots of room for more improvement. So we might as well just start digging into it now. What do you say?
Before you jump too much, one reason that I want to emphasize that we have stayed on this topic as long as we have is, one, you're nowhere near mastering it, and this is um, one of the greatest follies of amateur trainers. They see the dog do something right once and they want to jump to something different, and rather than sticking on something and really digging in and really hashing it out, going through the good and the bad, that's the difference between most amateurs and pros. Amateurs will see a dog do something right once or twice and say, all right, it's time to move on. Where really it's time to do it 100 times more, 1,000 times more, to really ingrain that response, to get it there so that you have it and it's something that you can rely on. So that's one of the things that I'm going to harp on you tonight, is about developing a cast that you have and that you can rely on and trust that you can get it when you need to get it. That's what this is all about. It is about developing a better way to communicate with your dog and have a trustworthy fallback cast. And to say it this way, a lot of times the trustworthy fallback cast for most people, not just amateurs, but most people, is casting away from the bank, where I'm trying to get you to develop that fallback trustworthy cast to be toward the bank. It's the reverse psychology of the whole thing. So we didn't jump into an easy concept. It was not at all. This is not something that was vanilla, but our journey has brought us here And that's why I didn't want to just breeze through this. And as your videos tonight are going to show, you haven't perfected it, but you are so much farther along than you were. You have a so much better understanding of what you're trying to get and how to get it and how to address bad behaviors when they come up. So there's so many things to that's why I didn't want to just do an episode on this and run off to something else, because I want to see you develop as a handler, and getting to see these videos over and over and over, you get to see how much farther you have progressed. But then again, you also see those spots that you need work on. And that's where, again, kudos to you for jumping out there and being willing to do that. There's times I've even thought about, I need to video a couple of my dogs that are going through the same thing so you could see something else. But again, that's going to be me bridging my technological deficiencies. I mean, I know a way to put it, but I'm super proud of y'all's progress, and don't think that what I'm going to say tonight is demeaning the progress. It's just that your progress is now opening doors that I can show you other things about his behavior specifically. So let's jump on those videos now.
Okay. Just so you know, I mean, I feel that way, Stephen. I think all of you guys know that, um, you know, I know where I stand. I do feel more comfortable that I understand the concept better, but I know I have tons of improvement. And at least I'm to a point now to where I feel like I understand enough to where I can go out and work on this on my own and understand the basic concepts. And then the questions that come after this privately, because we're moving on to different concepts, are going to be more advanced now. And at least when you give me an answer, I'll know more about your answer than I did 2 weeks ago, because
Sure.
2 weeks ago I was totally clueless. Let me pull this. So you guys be patient with me. Obviously, this is not a flawless system digitally, so I'm going to bring this. I really want it to look like. Um, hmm.
Yeah, take me off, right?
Let me hide you.
Lost your audio. All right, you're not there.
Is that better?
Got you there.
No.
Yep.
Okay. Are we good?
That was weird.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Maybe I tried to move too fast. Okay. So you want me to go ahead and play it?
I want you to one, pay attention to the fact, I know it's frustrating you, but he's trying to look into the water for one thing. But number two, pay attention to his line in the water. You can actually see him make 2 or 3 different decisions. This is great because you got off the water a little bit, but you can watch him go for more water and then less water and then plane out. And I kept telling you, if you back off the water, it's going to give you a chance to get a better initial line, and it proved it here. So pay attention. You can actually see him. It's almost like he's like if when you go bumper bowling and you put the bumpers in the gutters, and it bounces off one side and it bounces off the other and then ends up at the pins. I mean, watch how he leaves out.
Okay. Oh, wait. I want to address this too. Right between his head and my arm, there's a there's some rocks there, and I think what he did was navigate through those rocks. There's some pretty good size, uh, like riprap rocks right there.
On the edge of the water or up the hill a little bit?
Up the hill to the water and into the water. It's where the culvert is.
I got you.
Okay.
That was very nice getting his backbone lined up there. He's still looking out, but at least you're not way off to the side on his backbone.
There was a mallard out there swimming in the pond.
That helps. When did he start all this vocalization on the line?
That time, the next video, he didn't do it here, I don't think, but on the next video, literally 15 minutes later, he started doing that, and I didn't know. We'll get to that, but my question was, why is he doing that? What is he saying to me?
All right, back him up just a little bit so they can see how he entered the water.
Okay. Whoops. Come on back.
That was what I was talking about, that zigzag, and it might have been navigating the rocks too, but it sure looked good. Now, this was a great cast. That was a really nice cast. This cast, I'm okay with. That was a lot of angle because you stop right there. This is the difference in developing the cast that I want. Your first cast was towards what should be suction. You're winning. He wanted to get out in the water. Good boy. You gave a right-hand cast toward the bank, and he gained toward the bank. And then you stopped him and gave a left-hand cast away. You let this cast carry way too far. I want you to give a quick stop and then a verbal right hand. Instead of, because you're developed, remember what I said, if you're not using your right hand predominantly on this, you're not training your dog. So he showed you he was willing to go to the bank on your first cast. You could have, when you blew your second whistle, done one of two things. You could give your left-hand cast that you gave with not a lot of angle, or you could have stopped and given a verbal right hand again. Now, you're giving that verbal right hand is going to be difficult because dogs think in rotation. He rotated to his left the first cast, and you were going to ask him to rotate to his left again, back to back, and then make a different decision to make an angle and then a straight back. That is super advanced. That is really super advanced. You didn't do wrong giving your left-hand cast on your second whistle, but I want you to immediately, once he crosses that line, roll him back into the bank with a verbal right hand straight up, because that is developing your cast. You let this cast carry way too far, worrying about running a blind, not worrying about developing the verbal right hand cast into the bank.
Okay. I would have never even thought to do that because he was going right. And again, my reasoning was, if I give him a right hand back, he's gonna run up on the shore.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly what he's going to do, and that's what we're trying to develop, is that that reliable right hand verbal. In this case, when I give you a verbal toward the bank with a straight up cast, it doesn't mean go to the bank. And you want to embrace that concept. You want him to go over there and to get the correction so you can go through the methodology of tweet, no, straight over out into the water, tweet, right hand verbal cast, like we've talked about in the previous videos. It's what you're doing here with this dog is running blinds like he is an older dog. You're not, you're assuming that you have that verbal cast into the bank already there. You're running good blinds. You're just not, you got to understand that your approach, okay, the approach to coaching a peewee ball player and the approach to coaching a pro athlete are two totally different things. With one, you're teaching the fundamentals and you're teaching them to understand the game. With the other, you're assuming that they know all the fundamentals and you're just refining the polished product that is there. Can we agree on that?
We can.
Tanner's not a peewee guy, but he is not a pro athlete yet. You're somewhere in the middle between
A freshman in college.
yeah, you're JUCOing it, and you're not Division I at the moment, but you got a lot of the fundamentals in place, and you got a lot of talent, but you got to shape that. And running these blinds without getting that right hand verbal or that verbal cast toward the bank and demanding him stay in is not what you're trying to do here. You got to remember, he's giving you all this control because he knows you have control over him because you have that thing in your hand. You've got to be able to get this kind of level of control when you don't have that collar in your hand. So it's developing these casts, understanding. You did understand. You 100% understood that if I give a right-hand cast, he's probably going to go towards the bank. And that's why that's why you let him carry that pretty angle away. But I want you to develop that strong cast being, I can rely, whether he's got a collar on or not. If I give a verbal cast toward the bank, he's not just going to immediately bail. And you avoided those training opportunities here. You ran a really beautiful blind for a test, but you did not challenge him with that right-hand cast right there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but let me get this clear. So I gave him a right angle,
and he made progress toward the bank.
And then I stopped him and I gave him a left back, but I stepped and it turned into a left angle, right?
Correct.
And so right there is when you wanted me to give him a right hand cast after the second whistle or after
Correct.
the first whistle. Okay. After
that, so hold on a second, and I'm going to try to draw this thing backwards and make it look like it's supposed to. And this is going to be a walking catastrophe, I'm afraid. But let me try this.
Our next show is going to be called The Art Connection with Jake.
All right, now let's see how that looks on paper. All right, so that's not the way our shoreline is, right?
But that's opposite, yeah.
That is opposite. So I'm trying to draw opposite and figure this out. So okay, hold on. So I can do it. I can do it a lot better this way. Now that I know how it looks on the camera. All right, so
correct.
There we go. All right, so you gave your first cast was a right-hand angle, and he took it towards the edge. Your second cast was a left-hand angle away. So you had two options. You could have, on that second cast, done a verbal this way, or you had two options. You could have, on your first whistle, on your second whistle set, tried to give a verbal toward the bank, or given the cast you gave and then catch him again and roll him toward it again instead of just letting him carry it away.
Okay. So I would have felt better and actually probably did think about the second option there, the upper option.
Yep.
But the point was there, so I let him go. I let him go to cheat myself.
Yep.
To give myself a better
That's where it really turned into a down the shore. When it got to the point is when it really got good and skinny, and you really had the opportunity to get a good training correction in, because that's where he's going to want a beach.
And that point is actually deep. He never would have touched. His feet never would have touched until he got probably within 24 inches of the grass line that you see. So he would have been in the water the entire time.
And see, when I've got something deep like that, I see how close I can get them to that edge and still give a right hand verbal and then turn and stay in the water.
I'm getting there, Stephen.
And it doesn't even have to be straight back. It can be, he can over rotate and swim away from the edge. But I just want to practice on, can I give that verbal and then turn and look for water, not just bail to the edge.
Like I would be teaching my kid to swim, teaching him to swim right down the edge of the pool. And if he looks up and sees the ladder, do not grab that ladder. Keep going.
Correct.
I'm with you 100%. Okay,
super.
Let's watch.
All this time you could have been working on right hand verbals. You could have got 2, 3, 4 times. And see, when I give a right hand verbal and they go away from the bank, then I stop and go back to silent cast toward the bank, which is this cast. And see, you let them get past the point before you gave it, where the shoreline falls away, and you didn't have to worry about it as much. Now you're having to fight a little bit more because he's out in the open water, and you don't want to get way out there again.
Let me tell you something. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier. I understand what you're saying 100%. Because when he crossed that point, all of a sudden that pocket made the area of water that he was in much bigger.
And you got a lot bolder casting toward the bank. I want you to have that level of boldness when the point's right there. I want you to be able to develop. Ultimately, you should be able to have his 4 feet dry up on that point and get a right hand verbal back and him turn and get back in the water and not run down the edge. Now we're getting into a much more advanced concept. But imagine if he had all 4 feet up on the green grass and you could give a right hand verbal and he would jump back in the water instead of just skirting down the edge. That's a level of trust, and that don't happen by accident. That's a long-term commitment.
You know, if we ran this 2 weeks ago and you told me what you just said, it would have been like Chinese language to me, organic chemistry, because I wouldn't have even known what you're talking about and why I would have been looking for that type of accomplishment. But now I totally I think I totally understand this.
It's funny you say that.
Everything. I understand it much better than I did, for sure.
It's funny you say that, because one, that's why Carol's book came up, because that was your original statement, is that I wish there was somewhere that stated all these different terms and lingo. And two, one of my daughter's teachers who speaks multiple languages was talking about watching this, and she said it's like an entirely different language that I don't understand. So I feel you there. I understand you there. And I was one of the most intimidating things for me when I started researching all this stuff was how many different terms there were and how many different, one guy would call it what looked like the absolute same thing, one name, and somebody would call it something else. It's super duper confusing at times. And again, so many times it's two people that are separated by a common language. You're saying the same thing, you're just using a different term.
Right. Okay.
All right. Gave a left-hand cast there after you had given 2 or 3 right-hand casts, and he's carrying this on, and you're pretty relaxed at this point. It's looking pretty good. So was he slow sitting there? It's hard to see so far.
No, he was swimming. He didn't hear me. And when I casted, he didn't hear me, and I don't think he didn't hear me. He didn't turn around. I don't even know why I casted. He just kept going. I think he had already seen the blind at that point.
Okay. Well, bearing in mind again, that wind was in your face. It felt like it picked up as that video went on. And I would say, based off of not just this one, but the other videos that I've looked at, I think he did hear you. I think he knew where he was going, and I think he blew you off.
Okay.
Because I like I said, it's hard to tell right there at the very end, and I couldn't tell. It was a long time between when you blew the whistle and when you cast, and I didn't know if he had a slow sit or what was going on. But I think you experienced the same thing that makes Tanner good, and that's that I know where I'm going. I got this figured out. You ain't got to blow that last whistle because I'm gonna take care of this from here on out. And that may be super frustrating. That may be super frustrating in training. It may be super frustrating at a test, but it's also exactly what I told you would make him such a good guide dog. Because once he figured out what the finishing product was, you could turn your head and go do something else because he's going to take care of the rest.
Right. again, his return was the line that was spot on.
Exactly. And he's learning that. When he comes back, when he is feeling his way out and he's keeping his eyes on you. Same thing. I don't know if you remember me saying this, but when I was talking about swim by, as long as you can see a dog's eyes, they're coming to you. The moment that you can't see their eyes is when you need to start thinking about swim by. And you see, he's focused on you the whole way back. And that shows honest effort on his part. And everything looks, this was a really good blind that could have been really better if you had been, and that's what you're going to hear me say about every one of these. Shocker, that they could be better. You could be developing the cast that we've talked about a lot more, rather than just running really good blinds that look really pretty. Because if you're really pretty in practice, that doesn't necessarily translate to pretty at game time. You're training for a mindset to be under control when things are more exciting. So really nice blind, super improvement. But right there where that point jutted out is where I really would have loved to see you develop that right hand verbal a lot more.
I can't wait to get home and try another one.
Kyle said, "What's the length of this blind?"
That is probably about, I would say about 80, 85 yards. Maybe a hair longer, something like that.
That's a good solid hunting blind. That's a good solid hunt test blind. Lois McCracken said, "Thanks for explaining the right-handed casting concept. If you ever want to come up with a book of my terms and my teaching, just go to Lois, because she's got about 4 notebooks packed cover to cover, and it's the same thing written over and over again. But she is a heck of a note taker. It's easy to take notes, but when you can see these visual references, I know I harp on it every time, but it is just such a cool teaching term because a lot of times I guess the reason that I harp on this is because I do the same type teaching when somebody is running in front of me and I'm saying, remember that whistle. Now we're going to talk about that in a minute. We don't get to hit the pause button while they're running, and they have to remember this stuff. And it's not always what they remember, and what actually happened is not always the same thing. But that's what's super great about this video.
Well, just to clear things up too with Kyle, I don't I don't know any better. So the reasons why I set the blinds where I do and how far they are is determined by the terrain. So I put the blind, I plant the blind on a point and go back to the other shoreline, and however far that is however far that is. That's the only that's the only that, I mean, I've only got so much to work with, and that's how I determine where these blinds go.
I don't think there was any judgment passed on that. I think he was just trying to get, but that being said, what you said is exactly what I do when I'm training. The same thing. The terrain is going to be a big dictator of what you can do. And the big thing about running blinds is I like to try to put something as far as I can terrain wise, because I want the dog to expect to go to the other side of whatever we're dealing with, whether it be a field, whether it be a pond, whether it be the field on the other side of the pond. I want them to expect to run until terrain runs out. So that's putting the finish of your blind right on the edge of the pond is not always going to be what I want you to do. I want you to push it up farther so they don't just learn to run to the edge of the pond and stop. But for the teaching purposes and for what you teaching yourself at remote distances, you've been doing a really good job of picking a good place to put it, picking a decent line to start from. And all you've heard me say is get skinnier, get tighter to the shore, challenge him more.
Yep, I see, and that's where we're getting tighter and tighter now, and I can tell the next time I go out, we're gonna stay tight.
You got 2 really good questions right there too.
I was gonna say, do you want to answer these questions before we
go? The running a training blind versus the same blind in a hunt test. That's pretty much what I was saying. The blind that you ran was a really good hunt test blind, was a really good competition blind. You challenged the line, you stayed on the line, you you crossed the line and every one of your casts made progress to where you were headed, as opposed to training where I don't care how pretty the blind is. I care about developing casts. So, for instance, if I'm doing a land blind with a young dog and I'm trying to get a right-hand directional change and I'm getting scallops back to the left, the dog is continually fighting me. Then 3, 4, 5 casts in, all of a sudden they give me a big directional change that carries across the line to the blind. I don't stop them on the line. I let them run as far as I possibly can to reward them for changing direction. So back to my
say that again now. What did you say?
I'm going to write it down because it's something that I know we're jumping off, and I promise we're not going away. But if you have the theoretical straight line, and I've got a dog that's running a blind, all right, let's see if I can make this come into focus. All right, let's say you get that. And you got every time you're trying to cast, the dog's gaining more ground away from the line. And all of a sudden, they give me a big directional change. When they do that, I'm not coming back and stopping them. I'm not coming back and stopping them just when they pass the theoretical line. I'm going to let it carry as far as I can and get that big recovery cast at the end, because it's not about the blind at that point. It's about giving me this cast. And when he gives me this one, I'm not gonna stop him. I'm gonna reward momentum, because you train for momentum and precision will come. So when I have all this problem, and then all of a sudden he goes, oh, wait a minute, I got to do something different, and gives me that, I'm not going to hack him down again. I'm going to stop. I'm going to let him go as far as I can to reward that cast. Again, this is with a young dog. With an older dog, there would have been a lot less attrition and a lot more, I don't want to say pressure, but it would have been a lot quicker reprimand for that bad behavior. This is talking about training a young dog, training a peewee level dog. So,
essentially that's a swim by.
This would be a land blind. This is just that's a theoretical land blind.
Okay.
And no, it wouldn't be a swim by because he doesn't have a bumper in his mouth. But it's when you're trying to when a dog's giving you, not what you're looking for, and all of a sudden they do give that cast, and you let them carry it as far as you possibly can. That's the difference in a training blind versus a testing blind. So is there an advantage
when you say you let him take that cast as long as say those words again.
Going back to my analogy about running blinds on a dirt road. And when you're running blinds on a dirt road, you want to stay out of the ditch, right? Mm-hmm. So over here, we start headed towards the ditch, and then we get in the ditch, and we're stuck in the ditch, and all of a sudden we get out of the ditch. I am going to let him take this cast as far as I can this way without getting in the ditch over here. So I'm going to let him carry that cast as far as possible to say,
so
good
are
boy.
You looking for a commitment from him? That's
correct.
The commitment. Okay. That's all. That's all I was getting at. There was you're looking for the commitment.
And when he gives me that commitment, I'm gonna reward it as long as I can. Make sense?
Yep, it does.
And the next question was: is there an advantage to running a super long shoreline blind in training? Yeah, because distance erodes control, and the longer you run, the more tired they get, the more likely they are to try to bail out and get out. So between fatigue and erosion of control, because they're farther away, the more likely you are to get that same concept of wanting to bail. So long is not the only answer, but it is a good concept to practice. Bring us up another video.
Okay. I'm gonna ask when I pull this up. I'm going to. I'm gonna.
Come on back to us, Jake. You're gone. It's probably just that lag from you changing over again because nope. If this is the biggest trouble we have tonight, we're in good shape. Bump it. Nothing yet. Do you apply the same handling for another short line? Is can am I the only one that can't hear Jake, or is he out for everybody? As far as the audio goes.
Check.
Up.
Got me now. Got me now.
That's
Okay.
crazy.
I know. Crazy. All right.
All right, this is Jake outside of his comfort zone because the water's on the left. So all right, got it fixed, guys. Thank y'all for the feedback. All right, what I want to know is what happened right there, because when that right there, it's almost like you threw a bumper down to the edge and he was hunting for it or something. That was just goofy.
Hold on. See that little piece of paper? See that piece of plastic at the very bottom of the edge of the video? That garbage bag was sitting on the edge of the water, and that thing turned into a pain in my rear because he was focused on it, and I walked down there and picked it up and put it in the grass behind us. And then on the next blind we ran,
the next blind off to your right.
Yeah, and he
was. So you litter bug, you just left it on the hill and forgot about it.
No, I was gonna come back and pick it up and throw it in the garbage. I clean up all the garbage around that pond. Trust me. But I left it there just to leave, just because I was busy until I came back to pick it up, and he would not take his eyes off of it. And then when he went in the water, he went right to where that bag was. What is it? What is that all about?
Because he thought it was a bumper. He thought it was, and I think I saw a little bit of avoidance, and I asked you about the whining, and I think, to be honest with you, you said this was the one that you noticed that he came back and started whining a bunch. I think it was a little bit of, okay, we're beating this thing to death, Dad. All we have done is this. Let's do something else. He may have been a little bit bored with it. And at that point is when I would remind you that your 4 big corrections are no here, no heel, no sit, and no go. Those are the big 4 things that we correct with a collar. And I would have given a firm correction on either sit, Nick, sit, or step forward and gone here, Nick, here, as saying forward motion relieves pressure. You need to pay attention to what you're doing, because I think he was just bored. And I mean, for you to say back and him to run down there and play in that edge, either one, he was convinced something was right there, or 2, he was totally being a turd. and just was playing.
He
And I
looked like
think,
he was playing.
I mean, to be honest with you, Tanner's saying,
Jerk.
"Dad, okay, I want to do something different. You're boring me here." So, and that's understandable. That's entirely understandable. But um, you're out of balance as far as the types of blinds that you've been running, but you're out of balance intentionally because we're focusing on something. So it's okay to be out of balance as long as as you know what you're doing is intentionally being out of balance in order to focus on a concept in order to perfect it. So we do this all the time. The truth be told, we take them out of balance in water work. We take them to where they're way more watery and then bring them back to the edge. That's what I talk about, taking the dog from the middle of the pond to the edge. We make them want to be more water and then have to tell them less rather than them always having a less water mindset and us having to tell them more. So it's okay to be out of balance as long as you're out of balance for the right reasons and you know why you're doing what you're doing.
I'd like to explain this too, that the reason I'm not tight to that shoreline is because on this entire pond, this is the only shoreline that is shallow. It's a uh gradual shoreline there. And then basically between where we are lined up and that culvert straight across the pond from where we are, is the deep water, is the break line to that shore. So that's why I am where I am.
All right. We're about to see another one of your flaws in understanding here, which is not a bad thing. See, when he kept looking way out like that, I would have sit right there. Because sit doesn't just mean put your behind down. It means you put your behind down and look straight out.
I
And so
never nicked him. I never did. Just
you
so you
nagged
know.
him. You didn't nick him. You just nagged him.
Yeah, that's right. He's so
No, it's
not
a
into
dead
this
bird,
right
Tanner.
now. He's like, whatever.
See, now stop right there. Okay, there's two things we're going to talk about. One, when you weren't wrong to walk off there, okay? But if you notice when you walked off, he left you. He totally checked out. He went and got a bumper. He just left. So there's a couple things that you can do right there. Backing up and resetting is by far the most fair read on your dog because you didn't know what was going on right here. I'm going to tell you what I'd have done, and I'm not going to tell you to do it, but I'm just going to tell you what I would have done.
Okay.
When he looked way hard left like that, I would have just said back. Because if you want to go over there, go get it, big boy. And I'm not saying if a dog accidentally looks left one time. I'm talking about if this is habitual. And you got to be careful. This is one mistake a lot of people make with young dogs is they say dead bird, and the dog looks to the left, and no, dead bird, and he looks to the right. Oh no, dead bird, and they look up. It turns into dead bird means look anywhere but straight because it turns into an avoidance behavior. So dead bird is just like saying on your mark. You don't run a race and hear on your mark 14 times. They say on your mark, get set, go. Dead bird is on your mark. Your hand going in is get set, and back is go. And if I say dead bird and tell the dog to sit, and they look way left, and they look way right, and they look way left, and they look way right, I don't say get set. I just say go. And if I say go, and the only way that you're not going to get some kind of trouble is if you go exactly where you were supposed to go and you knew it the whole time. You just weren't looking there. But if he looks way left and you say back and he goes way left, stop, give him a nick, no, here, and go through the process again. But you cannot, there's a point in time, especially when a dog gets bored, you cannot feed into their bad behavior. You cannot. And you standing there and continuing to nag him is feeding into it. And this would be a good time to cut bait and turn around and do a zigzag drill like we talked about one of our first conversations. We were talking about how to get better lines and how to y'all to get better conversation. Turn around and do a zigzag drill and make him work with you. because it's not that he's tired. It's just that he's bored. And we're not going to allow him just to dictate when he does and does not work.
I get that. I honestly do. I think if you remember in the next video that you saw, he was doing the same thing and he kept looking left out into the open water and I
Correct.
said back and I let him go. I called him back and he kept doing it. So finally I sent him and then I gave him a right over verbal and
Now,
got him back to the line.
Couple questions before we get too far down the line. You're getting into a slippery slope when you say, Boone said, do you apply the same handling for down the shore marks? A dog that wants to beach early, do you do down the shore as you do on down the shore blinds, and how early past the gun is too early? One, Jake made a post about this earlier. That is TOO early, not TO early. But that's one of my pet peeves too, Jake. So yes, I do that similar approach to down the shore marks. For me, at the beginning, I don't like to see them get out under the arc at all. Never any more than halfway under the arc. So that's a very broad answer to your question. Jamie said, what's a good approach to starting cold blinds? Because I'm finished with bird boy blinds, pattern blinds, etc. You're way ahead of me if you're finished with bird boy blinds. That's something that I do with dogs for pretty much their whole career. That's a really, really broad concept that we can't necessarily answer here. But I would say if you are super confident in your bird boy blinds, do bird boy blinds in the same place for 4 or 5 days in the exact same spot, and then take the bird boy out of the picture and just run those as cold blinds. That would be a good way to ease them in to cold blinds because they're in a familiar place, running to familiar spots, but you took the bird boy reference point out. And Paul asked, this is the one I really, really, really wanted to point out. Paul said, is dead as a cue once they're looking where you want them to go, right? No, absolutely not. Because this is one of the problems that we have. We get the dog looking right where we want them to, and then we say dead bird. And it makes them think that they're looking in the wrong place, and they start looking away. Dead bird is when you say dead bird to a dog, that is saying we are running a blind. Find where you're looking. So at that point, the dog should start looking to where it thinks it's supposed to go. Here's a hint. Where it's supposed to go is dead in line with its spine from the base of its tail to the back of its head. If it just sits down and looks straight out, that should be the spot.
So what do you do? What do you do when he's swinging his head?
Sit.
Sit.
Let me give you a little hint. Are either of us looking at this camera screen doing this right here? Right?
Oh my God.
Doesn't that make sense?
That's the best analogy you've given so far, Stephen. I love that.
So doesn't that make sense to a dog?
Yeah. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
So
I get it.
So don't say dead bird once they're looking out and they're perfect. Say dead bird and then go. Everything after that should be here, heel, sit. Here if I want my head to come toward the dog's head to come toward me. Heel if I want it to go away. And sit means sit down and look straight out. So don't say it when they're looking out. Say it and then get them to look out. And as soon as they look out and they're looking where you want to, then your hand comes in, because that is an affirmation that they're looking in the right spot.
The thing that we do as humans, and if you don't believe me, just turn on the news right now. We complicate things. We just take things that should be simple and we complicate things. Is that not true?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely. All right, rock on with your with your video. That right there just drove me nuts.
I can tell.
And
can I tell you what I was thinking?
You probably wonder what in the world's going on. He just went in there and played in the edge of the water, I mean, he obviously had not working on his mind, but go ahead.
I honestly was thinking, oh, he's gonna go pick up this bumper. I'm gonna let him because this is gonna clear his mind, and then we're gonna go back to the line and start all. We're gonna restart this. That's what I was thinking. Right or
And
wrong, that's what
that's
I was
not
thinking.
wrong. That's not wrong. I wouldn't argue with it over that. And but he was definitely being a turd as far as his working attitude right here. And part of that too, let me go ahead and say this, is because you're farther away from the water and he felt like he had the option to do it.
Ah,
So had you walked right up to the edge, he'd have took off like a rocket ship into that water. But
what did I
backing
do?
up, distance erodes control. And that's part of one of the reasons I was screaming, get away from the water. So we got some more options here.
Okay. So what would you have done if I'd have picked that bumper up and thrown him a happy bumper out in the water?
I'd have probably hung up this whole conversation. Um,
Oh
for,
my God.
for,
Are we
for a
having
dog,
fun or what?
for a dog that had, for a dog that had attitude problems based around desire to go, or they were feeling kind of down, I wouldn't have a problem with that. That's not Tanner's problem. I mean, and,
Okay.
and for any of y'all, if this is your first time watching us, Tanner's problem is never about how much he wants to do the work. It's about if he wants to do the work on his terms or Jake's. This is an extremely high drive animal, and he is not one of the other services that I hope that you're seeing out of all this work that you and Tanner are doing together. Is I hope it's making him a better house dog too, because he's going to be a much happier dog being worked on a consistent basis than just sitting in the house, getting spun up higher and higher with energy.
Well, here's what he does. He is a much better house dog to all of us at home, including my son, who he adores. And if he goes out a door and a window, like I have a sliding window that I let him up in and out of my basement to. And if I take one step closer towards that door than the exit door that goes up my stairs, he thinks we're going to go work and he jets for that window. And he does, when he jumps up on the stool to jump out the window, he does circles because he wants out, because he wants to go work.
Sure.
Okay.
Sit. Sit. Here.
This was a great move, except right here. What's wrong with this picture?
I don't know.
All right,
Is
I'll
he
give you a
sitting the
hint.
wrong way?
Do you see Tanner?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. And I was on, let me hold on, let me stop this. So I will tell you honestly, at that point, when I sat him down, I didn't know if he was supposed to be sitting and looking at me when I walked back, or if he was supposed to be lined up with the blind.
I want him to sit on the edge and look at you because I don't want any more twisting and turning. I want a straight line back to you so that he has a straight line back to the water.
Aha. So his focus was the line between the edge of the water and the line.
Correct.
Got it.
Exactly.
100% got it. I did not know that until just now.
Here. Here.
Now he did perfect. You said here, he poked his head. You said heel, he poked his tail. Now he's poking a little left here, but he did everything according to what you told him to do. Now he said, I am going to run this edge. Now I'm going to look dead out in the pond. That was pretty. That was a pretty honest line right there. Based off of all your alignment and everything, that was a really good job. Now, are you seeing a common theme here? That's the exact same thing you gave on your last blind, was a cast toward the bank the first time. Now,
Do you know why?
well, because I trained him and he wants to get out in the middle of the pond. That's one thing. But go ahead with
Well,
your
my
explanation.
thought was to not avoid that edge. And if this time I was thinking because he was very close to touching the bottom with his feet, and I thought this time I'm just going to let him run on out, and I'm going to run that drill like you taught me the last week.
Yes and no. We're going to talk about that as well. However, that was this is the mirror image of your other, the first video we watched. He jumped for big water. You cast to less water. And you had the option. You could have done exactly what you did in your first video, stopped and given a right-hand cast, and he'd have carried it on down the edge. But you were challenging a little bit more here. You let him get dry. And we're going to talk about this decision in just a minute. So go ahead.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Oh, that was the end of that one. So I got to pull the other one up.
Do what?
I had to split it in half so it you can't download or upload anything over 100 megabytes. So,
but you're going to go away again.
Oh man, I don't have to.
No.
I know. Let me try to stay on. You're right.
Can I hear you? Nope. We're not going to do that again. We're going to let you stay on and have a smaller video than playing peekaboo on your audio. Negative. Shout out to Corey while you're out here with Tangle Free, because that is pretty sporty looking hat that Jake's got on. That's actually Tangle Free apparel. That was a really, it took, I didn't see it until I saw him turn his head to the side, and it had the Tangle Free logo on the side of the hat as well. And I was like, man, that's pretty neat looking hat. There you are. There you are.
All right. Okay.
So now we've gone one left-handed cast, and he carried it all the way out the water.
Can you see it? Oh yeah, here we go.
Now, so stop right there.
Oh, wait a minute. Is this the same one?
Sure looks like it.
It is. Because the other, dadgummit. We're just gonna go with.
Just pull up your next video and leave it small, so we're not playing that audio game.
Okay.
If that's the biggest problem we got, that's not too bad.
Can you live with that for now?
I can live with it. Yep.
See if this one's bigger. Not really. Okay.
That right there was a telling thing. Now, I wish that was, okay, hit your pause button. Now, you gave a right-hand cast towards water. That was when he exposed his heart. When you gave the right-hand cast towards water and he dug straight back, that's what every dog will do when they're not trying to do the right thing. He gave you that response. Now, again, going back to what I said about two people being separated by a common language, I would agree with you 100% that most times the worst thing that you can do to Tanner is bring him all the way back. And
that's why I did that, because you told me that before.
Exactly. And I will not argue that fact with you at all. However, speaking in his terms, what was he wanting to do that made you bring him back?
He didn't get back in the water.
Okay. So what did you do to punish him?
I brought him all the way back.
In what medium?
Oh, I see. I should have made him get in the water one way or another, whether he was going to come back or go back.
Because you rewarded his land-eye dominance by letting him run back on land. If you want to bring him back and start over, that'd be one thing, and I wouldn't have a problem with it. But bringing him, and if it was just one of those things that you were going to cut bait and start over again, I'd be okay with that. But that can't be your default reaction, that when he doesn't give you a cast or he gets dry, that you immediately abandon him and calling him back, because you're letting him come. I mean, if you do, make him get in the water. He can't activate swim by, Paul. He don't have a bumper in his mouth, remember? So the point to be made there is, if you bring him back, make him get in the water and then bring him back. Don't let him have his way by being on land. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So what you had a great opportunity there. Again, you were running this blind as if you were running this at a competition. So roll it all the way back to what happened when he got out. You were running this as if you were running this in a competition, not as if you were training. Back it up a little more, a little bit more.
Let's back it up. Back it up.
Okay. Whistle. Look at the cast that you gave. Oh, you gave a big angle, and he gave you a straight back. Remember, I want you to save those big casts. If you're going to give that cast in training, I want it to be a very minimal angle, because I want him to be wanting to get back to the water. When you stopped him here, you should have brought him back to that original spot and either give that right hand angle again, or my preferred way would be give that no, right over, make him get in the water, tweet, left hand verbal back. Just like the teaching of schooling of that cast that we talked about several sessions ago.
Right. The dirt road.
Yes. And
okay, I'm
kicking
with you there, man.
Tweet, no, which is, it's not swim by, but it is remembering that no equals more water, casting him right straight over, back out into the water, tweet, left hand verbal back. And if he goes back to the bank, tweet, no, Nick, same, right over, stop, left hand verbal. Are you with me now?
100%.
And he dug straight back on you on that big angle. That's what happens at every hunt test when a dog gets dry and the hunt handler never gets them back in. They give that big angle and the dog runs all the way down the bank, and they say, thank you for your donation. Sorry, you won't be back in the next series.
I understand.
Okay, so keep on rolling.
Do we have to watch this again?
You see, you should have stopped him right there and done it again.
When I stopped him right there, I should have over.
You could either given the angle, which was the lesser cast, better to give the straight over out and then give the left hand verbal toward the bank.
Yeah. So for me, the next time, having to make this decision on my own in the field, I would give him a more direct over, because that would be, I would have more confidence doing that he would actually get in the water than if I gave him an angle back.
When you give that over, you cannot allow him to make any progress down that bank. It has to be an over into the water, because if he makes 5 steps back and then gets in his mind, he danced five steps down the bank. Exactly.
So what do I do? So if he takes 5 steps, do I stop him and call him back? Like tweet, tweet.
Exactly.
And then over?
Or stop him with a nick and call him back. Don't let him keep dancing down that edge.
Oh my goodness, I think I'm liking this too much, Steve. Like I don't have enough to do already in my life.
Here.
Kyle asked if the no would be given as indirect pressure or direct pressure. Neither, because remember, that's the way that we activate swim by. So no, even though there's not a bumper in his mouth, no is not no, you're in the wrong place. No is not know that you're doing the wrong thing. No, if this was an algebra equation, I've always wanted to do this. Oh, I've always wanted to do this.
Well, here you go, Steve.
So,
see, we're benefiting you too, man.
So, algebra equation. It's not know that you're in trouble. It's no equals more water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and it's not, Kyle, to answer Kyle's question, it's not know that he's in trouble. It's not know that he's doing wrong thing. It's saying, just like when we activate swim by, we're saying that get in the water. Water is the answer. Go toward the water. And that's one reason we're telling them no, is because we're wanting that 90-degree over out into the water. And then that left-hand verbal into the bank. Super.
Here. Sit. Sit. Back.
Another really good line. Really good line. And you're getting results from that callback, but you're not embracing the opportunity to train. See, that would have been a verbal for me. See how he's bleeding already? That very first cast I'd have done as a verbal. Given as his feet are totally dry. See, there he is. He's blowing you off again. Back that up.
Hold on. Okay. I want you to say what you're going to say, but then I'm going to ask you a question about this that was very important to me right there.
I'm going to answer your question before you ask it. You made a common rookie error right there. One is that his feet were on the bottom. He started generating more noise and lunging water, and you didn't let your whistle match that. You didn't blow the whistle till he stopped. You just gave a little tweet and then went, oh, did he hear it? Did he not hear it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure, so I'm just going to let him go because I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt. I would be down with that had he not blown you off on the previous blind. Did you run all these on the same day? Were they back to back to back?
Yes, all three of them.
So he slipped that whistle on you when he was 10 feet from the bumper. Now he slips the whistle on you when he's 20 yards from the bumper. And I'm not saying that he winded it. I'm just saying he wasn't looking to hear that whistle and stop at that moment. He might have had a greater increased sense of urgency because he felt his feet on the bottom and he was trying to do the right thing to get to more water. That may have been a contributing factor in why he didn't stop, but he didn't stop. And if he heard that whistle and didn't stop, in his mind, he gained a little bit more control. Did I answer your question?
No. That you answered that question, and that was one of my questions. But my question was, when you run a blind across and there's a shallow point, okay, that comes across your line, and his feet are gonna, unless he was way out in open water, his feet are gonna touch. And when he ran across that point, I let him because he was still lined up with the blind. Is that okay?
He didn't let touching the bottom pull him out of the water, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't know I was saying that, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So that's not bad. However, I would like to see a dog get to the point, and not forever in their life, but to the point when they feel the bottom that they actually push off to the opposite direction. I would be okay with him being wider on this blind if every time he touched the bottom, he pushed to the right.
Okay, I get that.
And Tanner was super happy with that, with the bank under his feet. Mm-hmm. We already proved that on the first sin.
Oh, I mean, you can tell by the way he's lunging forward. He was super happy with that. He was hoping it was all the way to the other bank.
So my question there is, you said you let him roll. Then why did you blow the whistle in the first place when you saw him hit the bottom?
Because he was going too far to the left. He was going towards. I thought he was gonna get out of the water.
Okay, so he started to look like he was going to get out, and he adjusted and pushed back. So that was a good decision on his part.
When I gave him a right back, he rolled to his left and then took that line across that shallow point and got back into deeper water.
Okay.
Right there.
The end of the blind was pretty uneventful.
Yeah, there's pretty much done at this point. And now watch on his return, he does swim out towards deeper water.
And that's because that that bottom did have an effect on him.
That's
It
what
might not
I
have been
just
as
didn't
obvious.
realize that till just now, but that's what I was going to ask you. That's why I brought that up. Did he swim out towards open water because he knew that point was there now?
Exactly.
Okay.
And a lot of
Good
folks,
dog.
exactly. And, you know, let's
See
just
him?
say that that's shallow. He never gets to running water, does he?
No, his feet never hit the ground.
So let's just say that hypothetically, where it was shallow, was actually a point that came up out of the water. And the line on this blind was to get in the water, go over the point, and then get back in the water. A lot of times when dogs are water-minded, when they get the bumper and they come back, they'll swim around that point, even though they went over it on the way out. And I'll have clients say, do I need to handle him right there and put him back on the point? And my answer is always no. Because if a dog is swimming around the point, they're taking a harder line than getting out, right? They're actually taking a more difficult line, and they're showing that their mind is in the water. So I do not force dogs back onto land when even if they took land going out, because that's showing that their mind is still where I want it, which is in the water. When they're swimming back and they swim around, I'm much more concerned if that hypothetical point, if we ran a blind that did not touch that point, that just skimmed right past it and went across the pond, if on the return the dog tries to get out on the point that I kept it off of, I will activate swim by at that point, because that's showing that they're getting to land-eye dominant rather than where I want them to be, which is watery. Make sense?
Yep, 100%.
So Boone asked in a test with a younger dog, do you still give that verbal back towards the shore, or will you cast back away? The answer to that is depends on how much I trust the dog. I mean, if the dog has that cast in their toolbox, and bear in mind, I don't necessarily run tests with the same mentality that most people do. I'm not trying to get a pass every time. I'm trying to challenge the dog and see if I can get that cast in that situation. And I'm more than willing to burn an owner's entry fee to find out if I've got that cast where I want it.
It ain't your money.
Exactly. but I'll know if I got it next time. So to answer that question is definitely maybe. Depends on the dog, depends on the situation, depends on what I'm working toward. If I'm getting ready for a big competition, Grand Master National, so on and so forth, you better believe I'll take that young dog and challenge them with that cast, because I want to see if I got it or not.
Okay. Let me see if I can get this right.
Okay. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.
I'm not. Whoops. We're going to do it this way.
Okay. One of the first things I want to point out is, by the way, I didn't know this until we had talked about it. So this is the same spot, just we turn to the right 90 degrees or so. And what is different about this blind than any other one you've run so far?
What is different about this blind than any other one that I've run so far?
Because this blind tells you exactly where Tanner is in his learning curve.
It's the only thing I can see that is that the terrain is sloping to the left before it gets in the water.
For me, when I look at this blind, the bank is busier. You got trees down that edge. You got, you do have that slight undulation that comes out, that little point. But what to me is so much more different is the look of it. The trees going down the edge, rather than being that wide open bank, look more alluring to the dog. There could be something there. So the down the shore picture was not as obvious here as it has been on most of the other blinds that you have run. Kudos to you. You picked a good blind. This will be a good blind to run from the other way as well. But and you got off the water. So we're seeing greater issues and problems, but only because you're picking good blinds and you're adding extra factors in that could, how else can I make something if I don't have all this stuff? What else can I do? Get you a white snow goose decoy, just one. You ain't got to put a bunch. and set it up there by that first tree and see what happens. You can add extra stuff in.
Well, I didn't mean to, but that garbage bag is over there too,
Exactly.
right? And that's
You
my
had your
smoking deal right
a
there.
wet windsock right there.
Yeah, that's right. And so you know, the shoreline is deep. This is a cut edge all the way down. I fish that all the time and catch bass there because there's a deep break line up against that shore, and it's pretty much of a straight line all the way down that bank.
Super.
Okay.
I like this. I would have sat the dog at the top instead of walking him down there at heel. Sit him where you were. Walk to the edge, call him there, sit him, walk back up the hill. And see, that's not natural for him to even stay looking at the water and you walk away. They're going to want to face you. That's what we, do their whole career.
I just didn't know any better. Now I know better.
That was a legit start. You said, I'm going to try to make this more clear. And that was a very legit start. Down here, I don't know what y'all call it up there, but when the sun's shining and it's raining, that means the devil's beating his wife.
See, I just sent him.
Now, see, yeah, you did, but see right there, you didn't stop him. When you recalled him, you just toot. Instead of stopping him and allowing him to get a mental barrier built right there, you just immediately called him back, which made it muddy, made the water muddy. He didn't know exactly where he wasn't supposed to be. I'd rather you stop right there, no, here, and allow there to be a mental barrier built right there where you stopped him than just that continuous recall that you did.
Basically, you're a teacher where the students get up at the end of the hour and go, man, I get that. And I'm the teacher where everybody, the bell rings and everybody's sitting there going, wait, what did he just say?
Do we have an assignment due on this stuff tomorrow?
Yeah, there ain't no way I'm going to pass this quiz tomorrow.
You did a much better job on this recall. See, at this point, he says, hey, you know what? How about over here? I think yeah. This first time he said, wait, what about over here on this right edge? And see, that's just him. He's being a turd. He's bored with this. He's tired. He wants to do something else that's more fun than this down the shore stuff. So I'm going to haul butt around this bank.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Do you remember that SRS at College Station in Texas? Were you at that one?
That was a long time ago.
It was at that park. Was at that DU Duck Jam?
Yeah, I remember that very well.
Okay. And so I'm going to relate to this. And I wondered if at that time, if all those people and all those cars, people screaming and bands playing, if that was a distraction to the dogs and that because and how do I control that? I guess I know the answer to that, but there's kids over there fishing, there's kids freaking playing basketball, and that's what he's looking at. He's looking away, but that's what I thought he was looking at.
Well, it makes him a better dog. So to answer your statement there, and I can't believe you don't remember that dude won that one, by the way.
That was when I probably first started to get to know you.
That was one of my favorite ever judges handlers meeting, because I remember the judge said your first mark's going to come out right to left and land beside the flashing neon sign. And do you remember? There was a huge flashing sign, and we're shooting shotguns at a high-rise apartment complex, and there's thousands of people walking past us, and the dogs did not care. It was so fun to watch those dogs carry on like it was no big deal because it was white noise. So training in this kind of environment is only going to make your dog better. It might make you frustrated at times, but he's only looking at that basketball court because he wants to look at that basketball court because he doesn't want to focus on his work. Again, I'd have just told him back and let him find out the consequences of taking it the wrong way.
I see what you're saying. So it'd be like sitting. You have your classroom has windows, and it's and there's a playground outside the windows, and the kids are looking out the window. You can't change your classroom. You got to figure out how to teach your kids, your students in that classroom, be it windows or not.
And I go ahead and tell you, there's a lot of people watching this that are going, man, Jake's got so many nice places to train a dog. I wish I had that much. So every time you start feeling bad about yourself, remember there's people in worse areas. Like down here, you hear so many people, especially in Florida, go, I've got nowhere to train. Even the water I got's full of alligators, so I can't use it. So trust me.
I thought about you today being on Lake Eufaula, because the water was 84 degrees. And there was gators all over the place, and I'm sitting here thinking, well, this would not be a very good place for me and Tanner to train. Because that water in that pond is probably about 63, 64 degrees, probably year round.
So,
okay. I think we have to go to the next one. Yep, let me hide this one. Go to the next one. I hope it's this one.
I can't tell. We'll know pretty quick if you hit play and he shoots right. This is where you
pick up the garbage bag. Don't go away, people. We're getting to it. I left this in there because I wanted y'all to see this.
I agree. Wholeheartedly, I agree. And that also shows us where you ran the other blind from, which I like the thought of you Xing lines. You crossing lines like that intentionally is good training. There we go. Now this is the absolute time to try to call him back and not try to get that cast. That is when it's right to recall him because you're already in the ditch. And you just ran with it right here, which is not wrong. Again, exact same cast to start the blind. Hit pause real quick. This is the carbon copy of your first blind. Initial line started left, big right hand cast. Second cast is left hand. So right hand cast and left hand cast. But my question is, and I know you got frustrated right there, and after all those distractions, why didn't you just do it again? Why didn't you do it over and over and over again? Walk down to the edge, call them to you, sit them there, walk back until you get it. You weren't the problem right there.
Ran out of patience.
Exactly. This is what one of the things that makes me a good dog trainer is that 99% of the time I'm just more hard-headed than they are. And it's not about losing.
Great quote.
It's not about losing your temper. It's not about pressure. It's not about anger. It's just saying, I'm going to walk down to this pond and call you to it. And I'm going to walk up this hill and I'm going to act like I got nothing better to do today than see you run this line right.
I just let him do what he wanted to do.
You gave in, and that's not wrong. This is what's so hard about dog training is that's not the wrong answer all the time, But with Tanner, you got to assume that he knows and that he's just jacking around, and that he is trying to manipulate his environment. So you got to assume that first, and that means you got to win. That doesn't mean that he has to lose. That is a good quote. Just because you win does not mean he loses. You're just showing him what you want. So, like right there, he's very extreme. I'm going to take big water. I'm going to take big land. I'm going to take big water. I'm going to take big land. If he takes a thinner slice of water, you win and he wins because he's still on the watery side of things. It's just a more direct line. You should have kept walking up and down that shore and calling them to you, or moved up and simplified if you had to.
See, I thought about that, but I thought, no, I'm not going to get closer to the water. I stood my ground on the line, but I didn't I should have, like you said, walk. Now that I know to turn him around when I walk him down there and sit him properly and line him up properly, I think I'll be much more astute to that the next time I do this, because that's what I want. That's like, I mean, that was something that clicked in my head when you said that.
Super.
You turn in your seat looking like that. Jake White, I was with Chris Zaldane today. I had to answer that quick question.
Did y'all catch fish?
Yeah, he's in second or third place right now.
Super. Big bail to the bank. And see, I would be the jerk that gives a right-hand verbal right there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I could see that. Yeah, I can see that now.
Now stop right here and immediate right verbal again. Even if you give the left-hand cast, make him rotate towards where he wanted to go and make a different decision. Tweet.
I get that.
You see him bring him back down that edge, and here we go again. Same thing. Tanner gets to win because even if you bring him back there, put him in the water. It wasn't wrong. It was just you were embracing the wrong mindset.
I didn't know any better there.
So to answer Kyle's question, if a dog tries to get in fat, do you avoid saying no? I don't say it in the same tone. So I'll whistle and say, no, here. As opposed to when they're on that edge, I say, no, over. Kyle, so no,
that goes told me you don't have any friends, so I know that was you were asking for yourself.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So that no comes back to doing no drills. That's a whole nother conversation as well. Same thing. Bail for big water. It wasn't quite as big, I don't think, but it was still pretty big. That's okay though. Ooh.
So here's the last one.
Now see how much more willing he is to go to the bank right there? He's getting bolder and bolder. So where he got out that time was way closer. So if you think back and look at your blinds over and over again, every time your first cast is a big angle towards the bank, and I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just pointing to the little things that when you record yourself and you can watch these things, you can see these tendencies, and that's not a bad thing. But also you can see how much more willing he was to get out that second time, which was actually the fourth or fifth time that he's gotten that cast towards one bank or another.
So what was he telling me? So he's let me get away with this a bunch of times now. I'm fixing to show him and get out of the water right here.
Well, I think a lot of that, to be honest with you, is the fact that you caught him back on the bank and let him run the bank all the way back. So that bank was getting a whole lot less scary, worrisome to him because Man, I just ran 3/4 of this thing all the way back and didn't even get in trouble for
There
it.
wasn't no cottonmouths on that bank, and he knew it. Okay, I'm with you there.
And again, right there, that's
Was that unacceptable right there?
well, if it was a hunt test, the judge is going, great recovery. You know, you were in trouble and your dog just angled into the water and everything looks great. If you're running this blind in training and I'm behind you, you heard all kind of expletives strung together because you let him gain 10 yards, 15 yards running down the bank, the exact same thing he got in trouble for when you called him back. So no, that wasn't okay. He's
So
got to
it's
get
like
his feet back in the water and then make a decision.
so he's like a wide receiver that just caught the ball, stepped out of bounds, ran 10 yards out of bounds, and then got back in and thought he was going to go run for a touchdown and everything was going to be okay.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And again, you want to be able to have that cast. That cast should be something that you have in your toolbox. You do, by the way, based off of you got to have that cast before you can do these drills. If you can't get a left angle on this blind, then you need to go back to doing tune-up drills and refine that. But the point of this is on these down and short blinds, I want to see you embracing opportunities to get that right hand verbal. So when you saw him bail towards that bank, stop and give a right hand verbal. And when he bails to the edge, then you can start using your methods that we talked about. However, there's going to come a time where he starts to bow towards that bank and you stop and give a right hand verbal and he all of a sudden stays in the water and you go, oh my gosh, it was possible. So
Yeah. So what I've learned from from these 3 drills and the lessons you're giving me, particularly along those midway points, is last week I was focused on getting him lined up and staying closer to the line. And now I'm thinking, now I can keep him closer to the line. But when I do this, I'm going to challenge him.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I get it, I think.
That's a great cast right there. All the way around. Now he's starting to give in.
I think he. Oh,
No, he did a great job. That was great. Now you're gonna give a left hand, I think. But just because he was just on the wrong side of the line, that was really great. That right hand silent cast. And again, he gave it to you again when the shoreline fell away. Same as your other blind, when the shoreline
he was
fell
in
away.
bigger water.
Okay. Yep.
See, I don't know these things.
Now, we're asking for swim by.
Okay, this is important.
Now,
This
and he
return
dug
is
towards you. He didn't give you swim by right there, right? Didn't give it there. Now, see, every time there, I'm going to say no because he hasn't activated it yet. And there we go. Now, roll it back.
So when I said no, it activated the swim by because the first 2 times I just gave him a whistle and an over.
Your first time you did this, and then you went to just straight overs, and then you went to no again.
You know where the confusion came? The confusion came from way back a couple weeks ago when we talked about me saying no too much. And
Correct.
so, and I avoided it from saying it too much, but I think the lesson I learned there was he didn't give it to me.
Correct. And when you just gave the silent cast or just gave the cast without that no, that's weaker. So roll it back to where he picks the bumper up. You identified the behavior. You were a little bit late. Whistle. No. Over. All right, he didn't give it. Tweet, Nick, tweet. No, over. Didn't give it. Tweet, higher, Nick. Tweet. No, over. See, this was a weak cast. The next one's a weak cast. Oh no, that was it. So he gained a little bit, but he didn't gain it all. You put your foot down, and I'd have probably put a little bit more correction when he was digging in, but that's still a lot farther than you got swim by the last time he tried to cheat on you
I
and
actually
came.
told myself right there when I finally got it. I was thinking in my head, I'm not. There's so much space between me and him. There's no way I'm giving in to him on this one. I'm going to continue to do this until I get that. Until I get the swim by.
And the other thing you did really well here is when you got it, you made him carry it. You didn't just let him go 10 yards and tell him, okay. You made him carry that swim by out till he's out the frame. That was a great job of making sure he followed through with the cast that you gave.
This goes all the way back to our very first lesson on swim by when you and the word commitment stuck in my head as the lesson that it's not actually he's not giving it to me until that sucker's looking the other direction and he's going to continue swimming until you say okay.
Correct. We had a very similar concept, me and two of my young dog guys this morning at the pond doing swim by association, doing the exact same thing. So, um, like you said, it came right back full circle because all this stuff is built on that platform. And if you do not maintain these tools, you won't have them. And like I said, I'd have been so disappointed if you'd have got a 10-yard swim by and let him off because he gained 15, 20 yards coming in on you, refusing before you got it. And when he gave it to you, you really felt followed through and made him give it for a while. That was really good training.
Okay, here.
You're showing a little bit of your struggle in your posture right there.
I was frustrated because he wasn't paying attention. Okay, so essentially that's it. I
Well,
didn't let I didn't
other than the fact she went and showed the bag and gave the
Yeah,
explanation.
I figured I didn't want to bring that into the show because it would just taking up more time. But yeah, at the end there, I brought the bag over and explained to everyone on camera what I thought had happened, and that white bag gave me more trouble on two freaking drills than I ever wanted one white garbage bag to give me.
That was like I said, these three videos that I mean they were super how they all build on each other and how much you can see the same behaviors in each one and how it's not the adjustment that I'm encouraging you to make is not monumental. It's not it's not to the point where I'm saying, Jake, I want you to run it down the short blind and you're going, what does that mean? It's it's just a simple difference between holding his hand and not. I'm asking you to take the training wheels off and encourage that verbal cast toward the bank and develop that. Keep honing it. Don't just run the blind for the sake of running the blind. Don't just exercise the dog. Pick that concept and harp on it until you get it, until you can get it consistently. Till and until instead of it being a exciting thing or not exciting is not the way to say a surprise that he does it right, that it's a surprise when he doesn't do it when you give that verbal toward the bank. And that doesn't mean that every blind I want you to run from here on out is a down the shore blind. I want you to, when you choose to run your down the shore blinds, embrace this concept and hold them to that higher standard and develop that cast. But it doesn't mean that everything you're going to do from here on out is going to be a down the shore water blind. That would be it. Not only would that be boring, but that would be he would figure out the concept and then he would line every down the shore blind. He would swim all the way down every edge of the pond, and it would be, academic because there would only be one answer. He would figure out that answer and he would always choose it.
Well, I think what has happened is I started out here and you scooted me in a little bit, and you scooted me in a little bit, and we're still, we're still not. how do I get my hand? We're still not there, but you keep tightening me up a little bit each time. And that's what I've gotten out of all this now. The things that I'm going to work on the next time we go run down the shore blind, which may not be the next time we go out, but the next time we do, the entry lining my dog up, and I'm going to purposely choose a midway point, and I'm going to challenge him up against that point. Those are my goals.
And what you just did is accidentally make an analogy that's one of my favorite Lardy analogies. And he said that dogs don't learn to run a long way, or they don't learn how to run straight by running a long way straight. They learn how to run straight by being handled tightly within the corridor. Well, what is the corridor? The corridor is whatever you choose for it to be. And just like you said, when you were here, we're taking that corridor and tightening it. So we're not just tightening it on Tanner, we're tightening it on Jake. And that's an important growth on your part.
Well, again, I mean, I just feel like I've learned so much, Stephen, and I really appreciate the value that we're progressing with here, and the lesson I get to go, the next outing I get to take that into the field the next time, and it makes me excited to get home. I got 3 more days of Bassmaster here in South Alabama, and I'm really looking forward to getting home, not just to be with my family, but to go train with my dog, because this helps me love it because I'm learning how to do it. I really appreciate it a lot.
And Paul, again, this is people separated by a common language. See, don't feel bad that you're not the only one that hears something and doesn't hear what I said. So if the strongest cast you can give is a silent cast toward suction, why is a verbal cast toward the bank what you won't hear? That saying is that the strongest cast that you can give is a silent angle away from suction, not toward suction. So you just totally reversed the whole concept of another conversation of another seminar, Paul. Congratulations. You don't know anything after all. I love it when people have, and this is the truth. One of the first things I encourage when I get done with a seminar is I strongly encourage people to not be sophomores in their understanding. And Paul is very much not a sophomore in his understanding because he's a continual learner. And the reason that I say this is that the term sophomore comes from 2 Greek terms. Sopha, which means the love of. You had the philosophers that were the sophists. So that means the love of. But the second part of that word is the same word that we get the term moron from. So the term sophomore, it actually directly translates to the love of idiocy. And the point that I make here is that, guys, y'all have learned just enough to be dangerous. Don't take one thing I said and run with it and think you got it just right, because you might not have it just right after all. So that's exactly why I say this thing, is because, we hear these things, a lot of the things that I've told you today, you said, I didn't understand that. I didn't know that until right now. Well, I clearly, in my mind, and maybe I didn't, I clearly spelled out how I wanted you to go through walking him to the edge and coming back up the hill and showing that line, but you didn't hear it. Now, maybe that's because I didn't articulate it clearly enough. Maybe it's that you weren't listening. Maybe it was just that I was pouring water in a full glass and you weren't ready to hear that next step. But I bet if you go back and listen to our video of our previous conversation, you'll go, you know what? That is what he said. And that's the point that I'm making, is that this is drinking out of a fire hose. I might talk slow, but there's a lot of information coming when I'm saying it. And I understand that you're not going to grab everything the first time I say it.
Mm-hmm. Remember the other day I said I have to watch these videos 2 or 3, or like our session, the retriever connection. I have to watch them a couple times because
every time we talk, that is exactly what you say, is that I just watched it.
Yeah. When you call me, well, today's Wednesday. When you call me Friday, I'll probably be listening to this again or watching it on my phone when you call me. That's why I answer so fast because I'm already on my phone looking at it.
That's pretty cool.
So where do we go from here, Stephen?
That's a great question because we've got kind of an open-ended point. I would like to see I would like to see another blind or two, not immediately. I want you to keep recording something. When you find one that you're real proud of, let's or if one that really confuses you, let's talk about it. But the other thing we have to discuss coming up, I know your schedule gets real busy. We got to make sure that we can do these in the next couple of weeks. I don't know exactly what your schedule is, but we may jump to a whole nother subject.
Next week is
Normally,
good for me. I don't have a
next week is good.
Bassmaster.
So normally, I guess you and I can touch base, and I want to know where you're at, what you feel confident in, what you want to work on a little bit more. Because I've got, a couple of conversations ago, you started saying, I'm like, that's another one, that's another one, that's another. We named 3 or 4 more. So I'm not as concerned about where I want to take you as where you want to go, and I can understand. Kyle wants to do down the shores with points. Kyle, we're not going to do too much too fast. One, we got to find a place with points.
I was
I'm
just gonna
sure.
say I need a pond that looks like that first. Go out to
Um,
Kenny Trott's place or
but I mean, you have more questions and insecurities than I'm. I guess what I'm saying, I'm not 100% sure what you want to work on.
if you ask me what do I want to go do next, I would probably say a 16 bumper wagon wheel, because or wherever you want me to go or where you think I need to go to help me understand how to line Tanner up better. And then the other one would be body language and casting.
That was one of my favorites. Let's talk about casting. One, because I might be doing something. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I don't do a 16 bumper wagon wheel. Primarily because I skin that cat a different way. I'm not saying it's not a great drill. It is a great drill.
Then,
The
then I'd
primary
like to
reason,
learn your way.
and the primary reason that I don't do it is because at some point in time, when you do a 16 bumper wagon wheel drill, you are running toward the truck. I've got a truck full of dogs, and if you're running in a complete circle, at some point in time, you're running at the truck, and either the truck is a wall and they're flaring off of the truck, or it is where the dog that doesn't want to do the work is trying to run to, and then you're getting a whole nother problem. So
Very interesting.
that's 100% why I don't do it as much, because of just the dynamics of working out of the truck with the dogs and not having that baggage carry on to the session. When you do the step up to the line and call the dog to heel,
I was just
if
reading the
the
same
dog
thing.
blows past and enters the water on the correct line, would you call him back to heel or go with better line into the water? If the dog blows past and enters the water on the correct line, I'm not 100% sure, Miss Carol, on the question that you're asking. I understand you're walking down to the edge and you're leaving the dog and you're walking back up the hill and calling the dog up to you. If the dog blows past and enter the water on, okay, so what Miss
Oh, I
Carol's asking
see.
is, when you leave the dog up on the hill
You
and you
sent
call
him.
the dog to you, if they blow into the water and keep on going, only Miss Carol would ask this because she's used to training these crazy dogs like Chesapeakes and Goldens that would do something quirky like that. So it depends on the dog. If it was Tanner, I wouldn't let him do it because he's trying to win all the time. If it was a dog that had been struggling mightily and all of a sudden something clicked and they blew past me and jumped in the water, I would spin around and run that blind and keep on going. And continue to allow the dog to have success because we had been struggling on it. But with Tanner, you give him an inch, he's already showed you. He slipped a whistle at the end of the blind, and then he slipped one halfway through the blind the next time he ran it. So It definitely depends on the dog, but most of the time, if it's an alpha dog, I'll call him back and not let him do that. If it was a beta dog that was struggling and gave me a good line, I would go with it.
10-4. So maybe we should talk about this. Maybe
You and
we
I'll
should.
get a little bit more
Yeah,
on the page of how we're going to do this next presentation, and
and
we
then
will
we'll put
keep
it out there.
rolling in the right direction, guys. This is a really cool deal. It's exciting to me because I'm used to controlling my element, my atmosphere every day, and this is not something that I could control all by myself. So appreciate y'all coming. Appreciate y'all giving up your time. It's amazing that we can spend 2 hours talking about 3 little clips, but you're
Unbelievable.
giving us so much to analyze, Jake. It's just that you are such a good demonstrator. Um, this was a
Thanks,
great,
Tanner.
but it's getting close to bedtime, and I got
It
children
is.
that want
Oh, I
love.
got to get up at 3:15. We have a 5:25 a.m. start, and we have a long day, and it's freaking hot out there. So I need to get to bed too. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thank you so much for participating. And I hate to ask, let me ask, I'm going to answer Jake White's question again real quick. He said, this is about bass fishing. He said that Zaldane, he's half Filipino, I'm half Japanese. And Jake White said, we look alike except that Zaldane has a big mustache on his lip. And I want to tell you something funny that we tell people, or at least I do. People say, "You guys look," when I'm in his boat, and I'm his camera guy, they always say, "We look like two peas in a pod." And I go, "No, no, 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 no. We look like edamame." So I hope y'all get a kick out of that. Hey, thank you again for watching another edition of the Retriever Connection. We're going to continue doing this until I guess we get old and senile because it never ends. Again, thank you, Stephen. Thanks, everyone. If you guys could, please try to encourage more people to come watch our video, particularly live, because we really like the participation and it means a lot to us on our end. So if you can help share it, then please do. Otherwise, you guys have a great night and look forward to next week right here on the Retriever Connection with Stephen Durrance and Jake Latondras.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.